The third thing that I have them do, and this has been incredibly helpful, by accident, I'm a book nerd, and I should probably be banned from Amazon. It would help my budget a lot. I was looking for some new materials to use in class, and I stumbled on this series of books that were produced through the Adolescent Mental Health Initiative. And if you have not seen these books and you're working with a college population, you will want to go to their website. The books are available, the galley prints, so there may be a handful of errors, but who really cares? College students are not really all about spelling at the moment. If you hadn't noticed, there's a lot of text speaks that shows up in the stuff that I read. So a little bit of, a typo here and there shouldn't be a problem. What the foundation that funded the project has decided to do is put free and available on their website PDF downloadable copies of the galley prints of these books. The website address is, I should have put it on here, www.copecaredeal.org. And there are not only this set of books, which covers OCD, What You Must Think of Me is Social Anxiety, 8 Stories Up is Suicidality and Bipolar, Chasing the High is Drug Addiction, Me, Myself, and Them is Schizophrenia, Monochrome Days is Depression, Mind Race is Bipolar. What my students have to do, they have to pick one, and they have to read it. Their goal in reading the book is to understand the person's story, talk about the role of stigma in that person's experience, because each of the authors deals with that in one way or another, and then they have to reflect on what they learned from that experience. Now, what students often tell me afterwards sparked an interest in me to try and evaluate the impact of the assignment on them. So I took the last paragraph. What was the impact of reading this book on you? I took the last paragraph and did a little content analysis, because that's what scientists do, is create data. The first thing that came up was very instructive to me. The majority, 66%, had some sentence in that last paragraph that said, I didn't know it was so hard. I didn't know it was that serious. I didn't know it wasn't something you could just get over. So they know the labels and they think they know what they're talking about, but they don't know what they're talking about. So they acknowledge the difficulty. They also often commented about, I didn't know it affected anyone else beyond the person. I didn't know it had wreaked such havoc on the family or interfered with school. So they saw it kind of as a crash course in the severity of the issues. They did, thankfully, they learned some things. They had increased knowledge. Their rates of describing the fact that they had acquired a better understanding, a greater degree of empathy with the author. Many of them would say things like, I can now imagine what it might be like to experience hallucinations. I can imagine now what it might be like, and it's nothing like they told me it was on TV. So they are improving their ability to empathize. They also, many of them, not quite half, but many of them felt that because the authors were specially selected. They were authors who were chosen because though they had had difficulties and challenges, and their disorders typically were severe in form, they were able to recover and are all now leading quite successful lives. They're not rock stars or anything. They're living ordinary, successful lives. And for many of my students, they simply don't think that's possible if you have a severe and persistent mental illness. So that was an eye-opening to them to see that that's possible. I'm planning on doing a little more organized piece of research now that I've kind of explored to look at first-person accounts. I know Allison mentioned that getting students to tell their stories once they realize that they're not alone, and many students still think they're alone. Once they start to develop symptoms of something, many of them still think they're the only one who feels this way. They still do. Even in a period of time where we should be more enlightened than we are, many of them still think they're the only one. I've had many students who picked one of these books because they have a family member or a roommate or someone they're concerned about. They read it, and it opens a dialogue. It helps them understand that person better. For example, one student chose the OCD book because her father had been diagnosed with OCD long before she was born, and she had a very difficult relationship with him. She had become hostile toward him, angry with him, frustrated by his behavior, and was at that point just this close from estranged from him. She read the book. She acknowledged in her paper that she didn't get it. She did not understand what he was experiencing. And she wrote in the next sentence, "And now I am very ashamed and embarrassed, and I feel like I've been a bad child." And I called her in and said, "Guilt's okay, but let it go. Call your dad. That's your next move." And that was her next move. So it was a way of getting a door cracked open. And basically, as she told me later, "Thank you for giving me permission to talk to my dad about this, because I really didn't think I should open that door," because they had so many conflicts behind them previously. Another student, he was sitting reading the book Mind Race, and his roommate came in and said, "What are you reading?" And he told him what it was, about a guy with bipolar. He said, "Oh, I have that." And the guy slapped the book down. He said, "What? What?" And they had a long conversation. They'd been living, sharing a room for 3 years in college, and he had no idea, not a clue. So he read it, wrote his paper, he handed it to his roommate. His roommate read it, and he said, "Yeah, it's right. Just making sure. It's right." But it changed, it opened a new level of openness for both of them, especially for the roommate who said, "Oh, I haven't told anyone here. No, not going there." But he felt open enough just because that book was sitting there to have that conversation. So I think that first-person narratives are extremely useful, and they're a pretty quick tool. So what have I found that works? Teaching people to use media literacy, since we're so buried in media, it's all over the place, and it's not really getting any better. We need to teach our kids media literacy skills. I also believe firmly, and the data supports this, that doing becomes believing. If you can trick people into, or reward them with grades, doing stigma buster activities, they start to believe what they're doing. One student did one of those Halloween stigma busters, and then I've now started a fight in Walmart. He got in a fight with his roommates in Walmart because of the Hannibal Lecter outfit that is always there. And he said, "No, you're not buying that because," and he went over the bullet points of why Silence of the Lambs is problematic, and then they had a fight in Walmart. So doing becomes believing. If you can get people to act, they tend to convince themselves and internalize their attitudes. And then it's extremely important. These students, now, they do not believe textbooks, and they don't believe professors. They believe real people's lives. They do not have a great deal of faith in their elders. They believe other people who are like them. So I think first-person narratives from adolescents and from young adults is an important thing to do. They can listen to me, but nothing is going to be impactful as someone who's like them.